I'm Daniel Lane Standig, and this is Innovation 19. Welcome to Innovation 19, our new exactly 19-minute podcast on innovation, entrepreneurship, ideas, and insights that can transform our future. Today we're talking with Taryn Southern. Taryn is a technologist, futurist, and artist. She's a former YouTube personality who now creates everything from films to music to digital campaigns that explore emerging tech and human potential. She's been named one of the top 20 women in VR. She was one of the first creators on YouTube. Her film, I Am Human, premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival last year, and her album, I Am AI, is the world's first solo pop album created with artificial intelligence. Taryn, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So we have to start with your documentary, I Am Human. Here's a little clip from the movie.
We are about to enter into the most consequential revolution in the history of the human race, where we can take control of our cognitive evolution.
What if we could expand your capabilities beyond what we as humans have never had before?
What we're seeing is that technology is becoming part of us because we're linking biological brains directly to machines.
We're handing the reins of our own lives, our own minds to us. We get to choose how we think, who we are.
We're talking about technologies that could radically alter the way we are as human beings.
But if we start tinkering with the brain, we start changing it, are we about to fundamentally change what it means to be human? And if so, are we okay with that?
Fascinating. You go through this process of following a paraplegic, a blind retiree, and an artist with Parkinson's through the process of getting brain implants. How did you come up with the idea to do this documentary?
It was a long process, actually. I had been in conversations with a handful of neurotech companies, and they were really interested in exploring how they might use storytelling as a way to shift public perception around what was actually going on in the world of neurotech, because there were many headlines hitting the media as a result of Elon Musk and Neuralink and Black Mirror becoming a huge hit and Westworld being a huge hit on television. And a lot of the headlines, while exciting, weren't necessarily reflective of what was really going on in the space and how people were being helped by these technologies. And so I sat down with these companies and we started talking about, well, how do we tell this story differently? Or how do we actually tell the true story, rather? And landed on doing a feature-length doc, in part because this is such a dense, complex field that requires a certain amount of unpacking. Mm-hmm. But we also felt that giving that sort of depth and length would allow us to really explore people's stories in a manner that's respectful to them and allows the audience to go on a journey with them.
When you think about it, we already use wearables to track how much we sleep, what we eat, how many steps we take. So it's not hard to believe that at some point we go from wearable technology or holding the phone in our hand 24/7 to just getting an implant, right?
Yes. I mean, we all utilize our phones at a level that would have made us highly uncomfortable 15 years ago. I mean, it's essentially become an extension of our body, and we use it to do everything from connect with others to pretty much search anything and everything, and it's at the palm of our hand. So we are much closer than we think to this kind of symbiotic man-machine relationship.
But we go to a whole new level when we start talking about interfacing with the brain.
There is something inherently uncomfortable about the idea of putting something inside the Nexus, inside the control center, the place that makes you and I who we are.
Right.
But, that's part of the education of the film, is to break down what the brain is, what it does, show how we really are just a series of very complicated, complex electrical firings in between neurons. And when you start to inject new electricity into that neural map, into that network, then you can do all kinds of things, from ameliorate diseases, or at least the side effects of diseases, to actually affect what we would seem to think are fixed personality traits.
You've seen this kind of technology up close. So where does it have to be for you to put yourself on the table, for you to actually go get an implant?
Well, I think in looking at my own film, it's easy to see how incredible these technologies can be for people who have lost function in some form or another and are desiring that function back. So whether it is someone with Parkinson's or with severe addiction, for me, it would be a no-brainer. Like if I knew that these implants would help, which I know that they do, in many cases, ameliorate things that medication cannot solve, then I do feel like we're at a point in history where it's safe enough to sign up and say, I want my life back.
And imagine the possibilities around treating things like anxiety or
depression. So many of us have had experience with or have close family members who have dealt with those things. In those cases, do we feel that something like a brain implant is too extensive of a solution? Or is it something that we become more open to as these procedures get cheaper, more safe, and just become more commonplace?
Well, on your journey to illuminate all the possibilities around AI and how it can help us in the future, you also produced the world's first pop album with artificial intelligence as your collaborator. And this was a project that went on for a year and a half with a number of partners, yes?
That's right. AI music companies, IBM Watson Beat, Amper, Ava, and Google Magenta.
But you're a technologist first. Like, you didn't set out to be a famous singer-songwriter.
I've always just been a musician hobbyist. This was not a career that I had ever planned to pursue. I just really enjoy making music, but I don't have the standard traditional music education or background. And so I thought it would be such an interesting creative challenge to see, is it possible for someone like me to actually create an entire album on my own in collaboration with AI, knowing that the AI is sort of augmenting the abilities that I really lack, or providing skills that I don't have as a sort of amateur musician. And for me, those skills were always around music production. So I could write a song in my head. I could sort of plunk it out on the piano, very, very basic. And then I had to depend on a music producer to translate that idea, bring it to life.
You know, when I first heard about your project, I thought, this is really cool because you're creating this whole new path for somebody who may not be a technically masterful musician, but if they have musical ideas and they can collaborate with AI to bring those ideas to life, well, more power to them.
That's right. That's exactly right. I didn't see this ever as a zero-sum game, but rather as a expansion upon creativity and creative possibilities, and making sure that anyone and everyone who's interested in making music or whatever their creative endeavor that they're interested in doing has the ability to do that with these tools.
I mean, this kind of augmentation of skill set or talent goes way beyond music.
Actually, in the past 10 years, there's been a lot of this. I mean, if you look at photography, for instance, it used to be that you had to have a really nice DSLR camera and have taken, all kinds of photography classes. And that was what was necessary to become a skilled photographer, and thousands of dollars worth of photography lenses and lighting and all of that. And now you've got every kid with an iPhone and 10 apps that can do all kinds of really fancy focal tools,
right,
able to produce quality photographs. Now, I don't think that replaces the sophisticated photographer, but it certainly has created a world wherein everybody's photographs look a whole lot better than they did 10 years ago, right?
No doubt, right. Having worked with these types of AI music creation tools, what do you see happening more here? Is it either A, that more people will be able to produce music no matter what their skill set is, or B, do you see the Nashville professionals using these tools to create music going forward?
I think it's the first. It's predominantly the first. At this stage, I think a really talented music producer would have very little need for these tools. They have this incredible skill set embodied in their mind and in their brain and in their their hand-eye coordination, and they're just able to do things so quickly that I don't think these tools really save them much time. They have an intuitive sense for what they want. So I really do think that it is more the first option that you gave. However, I do see a world wherein the same kids who grow up with these technologies and learn how to make music with these technologies will inevitably evolve them. And as they enter careers at 50, whether in their college years or 20s, whatever, they will be incorporating these tools in really novel, interesting ways that we can't yet anticipate. I mean, it's kind of like the idea of early coders who had to learn everything within a certain type of script. And then of course that script evolves. And then by the time, I think like in the next 5 to 10 years, because of the ways that these tools have evolved, like no one will actually be really coding anymore.
Right.
And so I think that the AI music tools will sort of work similarly, where we'll see them just being part of the workflows of young professionals.
So what's your next adventure in AI?
I'm currently collaborating with a video AI company that basically rebuilds photorealistic video pixel by pixel using neural networks. And right now, you look at something like deep fake technology, right? Which, I mean, even just saying it's not necessarily, we don't associate it with a positive use case, but you're looking at the technology behind these videos. It's kind of like a mesh technology. It's really interesting, but it's also pretty clear that it's fake.
Right.
But what if you needed to reconstruct a video completely from scratch? You're not actually fusing any pieces together. You're just rebuilding pixel by pixel, like a person or an environment. And this can be very cost effective and helpful for productions, particularly in a time where you actually can't have multiple people on a set because you're in a pandemic.
Right.
This becomes like a really interesting technology. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm also really excited about certain AI storytelling applications. So the ability to create multiple storylines and have an interactive experience between viewer and the story, having the viewer be able to
choose your own adventure.
Choose your own adventure, but really in such individualized, personalized ways where the AI is pulling from your API and able to incorporate things like the weather in your town and like things that it can find that just make that story so much more interesting and sort of fun to navigate for the user. So there's a company out of London that's called Charisma AI, and they have built what I think is one of the coolest platforms where you can kind of explore this technology. It uses voice recognition software, and it's pretty unbelievable.
So we have all kinds of people who listen to Innovation 19. Some people are new in their career. Some people are veterans. What advice do you have to help somebody really stay in that creative mindset and to keep looking forward at what's next and lead the way in terms of innovative change?
In terms of mindset, definitely adopting a curious approach. And part of being curious is sort of checking judgments at the door and realizing that while things might appear one way on the surface, you really have to dive deeper and look at it from multiple angles before making any assumptions. And I guess that leads to the second part of the mindset, which is just checking assumptions at the door, like being really aware of the assumptions, the underlying assumptions that we have in going into any new topic or conversation or technology. Something I think we've all had to learn this year due to COVID is just this knowledge that we can't control everything, and there's a lot of uncertainty around us, but we can control how we react to it. And I think the same can be applied to technology, knowing that there is a lot of change. It is going to impact our worldview. It's going to impact our family life. It's going to impact our jobs. There's no way around that. And so to adopt a positive abundance-oriented mindset that says, hey, if I'm maintaining a curious mindset around these things, and I can be adaptive, then I'm actually going to have I'm going to see all of this as an incredible adventure and exciting rather than something to be feared.
Well, and Taryn, I hope you don't mind me bringing this up. Over the last couple of years, you've been on a really extraordinary personal journey. You've been through cancer treatment. You've been very open about that. And knowing you've turned it into one of the biggest and most amazing learning experiences in your life.
I did. It gave me a lot of renewed purpose around what I'm doing. I think there's a huge argument that without technology, I very well wouldn't be, my story might have ended very differently.
Mm-hmm.
and that's through medical technology, of course, but then there are all of these supportive technologies. I was able to save my hair during chemo by using this cold cap technology that a lot of people were not familiar with. And that was an interesting education process. People were like, how do you still have hair after chemo?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, not much, but I had enough. And that was a result of me being curious and exploring what else is out there that might help with some of these side effects and things. I was very active in biotech diagnostics before even being diagnosed with cancer, which was sort of strangely ironic, but
right.
But I had done all of these different tests. So I already had my entire genome mapped. I had already frozen my eggs, like number of the things
Stem cells
I had frozen. I mean, these things that you could never anticipate that something bad like stage 3 cancer is going to happen to you, especially, I mean, I was 33 years old when I was diagnosed, and
yeah,
and yet it happened. And I was so grateful that I had done these other things. It reduced the time that I needed to wait before starting treatment significantly. And I think it just gave my doctors a much more clear map of what was going on in my body much faster. So, I think just I'm going to continue staying on top of things as they come about.
All right, lighter topic. We've seen countless interpretations of what the future could look like, from Blade Runner to Her to 2001: Space Odyssey. So my question for you is, what version of the future in TV and film is your favorite?
Oh, man. I don't think I've seen a version of the future that I would be really excited about yet in any sort of film television format. I would love to see someone create this beautiful, imaginative version of the future that does not look stark and like we're all living in the Death Star.
Right.
And
it's always so dystopian.
Right now, some of the most exciting things that are happening are in the world of synthetic biology, and where we can pretty much like atom by atom reconstruct anything in the universe. And I'm like, why wouldn't we have cities that are filled with beautiful plants and trees? And
I mean, the future doesn't have to be so desolate. Like, we could 3D print some trees,
Yeah, right? But I still love all of the dystopic Hollywood stuff too. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Westworld. I think that was one of my favorite shows when it first came out.
Yes.
And I actually really enjoyed Her. I thought Her was beautifully done from a storytelling point of view.
But I totally see why those films don't completely jive with you, because you're a technologist optimist, and you also frequently tell stories from a humanistic point of view. So when you're talking about new technology, it's not about the bells and whistles of the tech. It's about the human experience of it.
That's right. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think people still can walk away with a sense of what this is and an education around it, but you've got to go in through the personal story. You've got to go in with the aspiration that all of us can identify with. And then, from there explore the technology. I think otherwise it just loses people. There's kind of this consistent process that I apply that I think, does the job of ensuring that the technology has a human-centric emotive focus. And I mean, personally, I think that's the kind of key component to all of this.
Well, Taryn, I have had a blast talking with you today and so appreciate you joining Innovation 19. If you're interested in learning more about Taryn, go to her site. It's TarynSouthern.com, Taryn Southern.com. And of course, if you like these short, sweet, and thought-provoking conversations about the future, don't forget to subscribe to Innovation 19 wherever you get your podcasts. You can learn more at innovation19.com. Today's podcast was produced using Post by Futuri. Post is in use by some of the world's top brands, especially those in the broadcast space, to maximize their content ROI and get the best material in front of the largest possible audience. You can learn more at futurimedia.com/post. I'm Daniel Anstandig. This is Innovation 19.